Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right wing crosser comes with Quenneville scores.
Here's a chance for Barrett. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They score! Scores! They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 38 for May 21st, 2021. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring the handsome face of one certain Sean O'Brien, once again, for the second episode in a row, we are not going to be much help because this is Cece Hockley and you are watching an American Hockey League podcast. And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us. But unfortunately, Sean has to go to Philadelphia and he's going to be up there for a personal reason, for a graduation. We'll just leave it at that. So Sean, unavailable, unfortunately, for this episode, but he was available last night as we recorded on Wednesday night. We're recording this on Thursday, but he was available on the 19th with Kevin Lacy to talk about the San Jose Barracuda versus the Colorado Eagles. And boy, we had a 15-minute time crunch, but we got her done. We did it justice. And thanks for everybody who tuned into that impromptu live stream, as it were. So anyway, with Sean unavailable tonight, I figured I would bring some friends on, to help kind of sort the remaining portions of the 2021 regular season and now the postseason, sort that all out. So Sean, like I said, was able to stop on last night, but another person that was able to hop on Wednesday night and coming on again as we record this, Teal Town USA's Kevin Lacy. Kevin, welcome back, my friend.
So since Sean is away, it's like our little slumber party. Should I have brought like marshmallows and chips and graham crackers and soda and beer?
Adult slumber party. You can bring that beer for sure. I should have planned a little better and then we could have truly made this, we should have both worn our pajamas and while Sean is away, the boys will play, I suppose. But unfortunately, we didn't plan that ahead as well as we probably should have. But no, that's a good thought. That's a good thought. So, all right, Kevin. Well, we are on the other side of the play-in final. And we're here to talk about the San Jose Barracuda. Looked a lot more decisive on paper than it was. 5-1 victory, but 2 of those goals for the San Jose Barracuda were empty netters as the Eagles tried to get back into the game when they were down 3-1 late in the third period. So our predictions, I wanted to start with that, Kevin. You said 2-1, kind of a low scoring game. We'll get to what you really wanted to say here in a second, but I said 3-2 Colorado. You said 2-1 San Jose. We both thought it was going to be close, and it was 3-1 up until the latter stages of the game, but you initially wanted to pick something else that was a lot closer to the final score.
My gut instinct said 5-2 Barracuda, but as I believe Sean was the one who went first with the predictions, I was sitting here thinking, why would I pick 5-2 for the Barracuda? So I tried to temper it. I was like, well, if I pick 5-2 for the Barracuda, I must be still going for the Barracuda there. And so I came up with a more logical explanation for why it would be 2-1, but I was a lot closer with my gut. And as they say, go with your gut instinct. Bottom line from my perspective is the Barracuda won and are moving on to play Henderson in the whatever it's called, Pacific Division semifinal, I believe is the official term. So
yep, it's essentially what the first round would be under normal circumstances, just the 1 seed against the 4 seed. And San Jose was the 4 seed originally, but they beat 7 seed Tucson and 5 seed Colorado to officially claim the 4 seed in this crazy postseason tournament that we have going on, that this is the only division that the AHL playoff is happening in. So the John D. Chick Trophy is up for grabs. And come this Friday, as this episode is airing, May 21st, You've got San Jose and Henderson. Henderson hosting all 3 games, should it go that long. And then you've got Bakersfield and San Diego. Bakersfield hosting all those games, should they go 3 games. So, yeah, San Jose, they looked up, I'll go on the side of Colorado real quick. I want to focus on that. But I mean, Colorado, of course, home market and everything, talking about what being familiar with what and it's tough to dig yourself out of a 3-0 hole. I mean, I know it was only halfway through the game, but I mean, Sampo Ranta getting that goal at the end of the second period, I was thinking to myself, Colorado really has a chance to possibly come back. I mean, Cardiac Colorado, they've had the propensity to do that in the past, but unfortunately, Mika Salamaki, bad boarding hit on Jacob Middleton, 5-minute major. That puts a dent not only in your discipline to not to draw that penalty, but to cause that penalty in the first place. And kind of a scary hit. Glad Jacob Middleton got up and skated back to the bench and was okay by all observances. But yeah, the fact that they took that penalty, 5-minute major. Granted, San Jose didn't capitalize on it, thankfully for the Eagles, but I mean, they were in a 3-1 hole at that point. So yeah, just momentum and everything. And Kevin, I want to say, I was really impressed with Christoph Rabik. I'm really impressed with that kid. He scratched from the play in semifinal. He comes in, scores a beauty of a snapshot off a big rebound from the pads of Eagles netminder Eustace Anunen. Adds an empty netter for good measure for that 5th goal. And, with a bevy of players that have passed through San Jose this season, I mean, I say, where's this Czech prospect been? But we both know he's been with Allen and Orlando in the ECHL for 30-plus games this season.
Yeah, and I do want to get back to the Salamaki
sure.
and the start of the third and Ranta, because it was I had some hot feelings on our Barracuda post-game show after dark last evening that I'll share a little bit of here. But
okay.
With Christoph Krabik, and I am hard to be tongue-tied, but that one's at my limit there. Christoph Krabik. It's funny because about 3 years ago, I received a tweet from someone who said, any reason why Christoph Rabik is not in Barracuda camp? And I said, who?
Who?
He's not in Barracuda camp because he's not with this organization. But that person must have had some inside info up in Canada, because eventually he did, after camp was over, he did sign a contract, but played the last 2 years still in juniors before finally making his pro debut this year. Got 1 game in with the Barracuda, did get assigned to Liberec in the Czech Republic during the I don't want to say work stoppage, but before the season got its act together, got going. He did play in 17 games, scored a goal over there, but primarily he was in the ECHL for Allen and Orlando this year. And it pleases me to hear that you're really happy with his performance, because 2-goal games do not come very often for this player, having 1 goal for Liberec and no points in the 1 game for the Barracuda, but he only had 7 points in 29 ECHL games this year. So we're not talking about this offensive powerhouse here,
No.
But what a shot though on his goal. I mean, the second one was the empty net goal, but that was my favorite goal of probably both games so far for the Barracuda in the 2 playoff games. Nick Malash, who looks more and more confident every time he's out on the ice. Down in the offensive left corner, found Ryan Merkley making a diagonal pass to the right point. Merkley made a nice move around the Eagle forechecker. Merkley's shot ended up getting blocked, but came right to Rabik, and he had one thought, and that was blast the hell out of the biscuit, and he sure did. And that put the Barracuda up 3-0, and really put the Eagles at a huge disadvantage there to try and come back.
Right. Yeah, it was the backbreaker in my opinion, because even though Sampo Ranta, he answered the bell. He was persistent on the puck in the crease, and it just kind of dropped in front of him, and he wrangled it and lifted it right above his leg pad there. Koshanash. That's a tough name to say because the R's are actually pronounced as SHs. So
Those
it's
check R's.
Yes, those check R's. That's for sure. And not the Charlotte check R's that we're talking about.
Love it.
Oh, anyway, I digress. So, hey, I did want to point out something that you said last night. While we were previewing the game, you mentioned that the normalcy, the back end normalcy was kind of returning to the back end for the San Jose Barracuda. And by all instances, from what I remember seeing in the game on Wednesday night, that seemed to have played out and rang true, that the back end and the defense really isolated the Eagles both in the neutral zone and when the Eagles were pushing into San Jose territory.
Yeah, the one stagnant, not stagnant, but the one solid core piece of this roster this season has been the defense. There have been some call-ups, but for the most part, you've seen Jake Middleton playing with Robbie Russo, Brinson Pasichnuk playing with Nicholas Milosh, and all season Jacob Megna with Ryan Merkley. That pair has not split up at all, except for when Ryan Merkley was hurt a couple of times. But there's definitely familiarity there, and Roy Sommer, especially these past 3 seasons in particular, has really shown that he does not like to mix up his defense pairs very, very much, if ever. So like last season, Keaton Middleton, who was playing for the Eagles this season, he was Nicholas Milosh's D partner, and they had a really nice embrace after the game. I was bummed that AHL TV didn't catch the Middleton brothers in the handshake line, hugging or chatting or goofing off or whatever, but they did get Keaton and Nicholas Milosh together, and they had a laugh, and it was a cool moment to witness. And that's because they played all of last season together. And so we saw it with the Capitals Bruins playoff game, the last one, where you had Ilya Samsonov and Justin Schultz not communicating at all. And I would say a good 70 to 80% of good defense is communication. And I play defense in my beer league, so I'm constantly the yapper. Gee, I bet you couldn't tell that I'd be the yapper of my D pair.
Really?
But communication is everything there. And so I think that's why Roy Sommer likes to keep his D pairs together. And so far in these 2 games, maybe sometimes the defensive structure really breaks down, but I think the breakdowns have been held to a minimum, and as they continue on here in the playoffs, we'll see what happens against Henderson. But as they move along, they look like they've found a lot of continuity together, especially, like I mentioned, Nicholas Milosh looking better and better every game this season. With Koshanash in net as well, over Melnichuk, I think there's a lot of good things going on the San Jose back end right now.
That's the wonderful thing about the postseason. You run into a hot goaltender, and for some reason, I'm thinking of Matt Murray with the Pittsburgh Penguins the last time they won a cup. It's like the goaltending and hot goaltending is what will win you a Stanley Cup at the NHL level. It'll win you a Calder Cup in a normal season at the AHL level. But hell, if the Barracuda and Koshanash, if he continues to be the stand-up, just hyper-focused goaltender that he has been against Tucson and against Colorado, allowing just 1 goal in each game. I mean, Henderson is nothing to shake a stick at. They've got depth for days, and we know that. I mean, San Jose just 2-5-1 against the Silver Knights this season. Of course, we didn't have that sample size against Colorado, but San Jose, showing why they were the proper 4 seed in the regular season, and they earned it again. They earned it. Well, they re-earned it, I guess you could say, by defeating Tucson and defeating Colorado. But yeah, San Jose they're looking formidable. They're looking, that defense really clamped down like we talked about. And former Colorado Eagles defenseman Nick Milosh, we talked about him, traded to San Jose at the beginning of the 1920 season. We mentioned that during the pregame preview there on Wednesday night. But I found it rather interesting that he had not put the puck in the back of the net in 2 seasons of play. He had not scored a goal in a Barracuda uniform. And of course it's an empty net goal, but a goal is a goal. So Milosh, being able to do that and get that monkey off his back, it's that's still something.
And I do think if anyone deserved it on this team, it is Nicholas Milosh. Last season that he never really found his form. Obviously being traded at the end of training camp last year did not help for starters trying to get adjusted to the San Jose system, which definitely is a different system than Colorado's for sure. So Milosh never really got himself out of the gate. And this year, with the long layoff, really got himself focused, made the Sharks out of training camp. If he didn't make the Sharks out of training camp, he was the very first call up at the start of the year, but I'm pretty sure he was. Got into 7 NHL games, played okay, maybe in over his head a little bit, but was serviceable, but came back to the Barracuda and started off looking a little better than last year, but just he has steamrolled throughout this season. And every time I watch the Barracuda, I think Nick Milosh is I see him more in a good way. I see oh, that was a good play. Oh, wow. I just realized last game I said that twice. This game I said that 3 times. This next game I might say it 4 times. Like he's steadily improving and just he's showing a more willingness to just do everything rather than be a defenseman. He'll be physical. He'll jump up into the rush. He makes really solid passes like the one to Ryan Merkley last night. And in Wednesday's game, he made a great look over to Evan Wenger to do kind of a shot pass off of Wenger's body in for a goal. So he's showing that his vision is coming along as well. So I think having not scored a goal since March 3rd of 2019, Nicholas Milosh absolutely deserved to get that goal no matter how it went in.
Yeah. Wow. That's that's a long time to not pot a goal. I tell you what, man. But yeah, this is where we're at. San Jose against the Henderson Silver Knights. And Henderson kind of struggling down the back half of the season. I know the Chicago Wolves kind of ran into the same problem. Both teams still finishing at the top of their divisions in the regular season, and now Henderson trying to claim the John D. Chick Trophy outright. So first game 1 is on Friday, May 21st, like I mentioned earlier. So what are the keys? I know Henderson, like I said, they're a deep team. And even when they have, Dylan Sekura, Cody Glass, Patrick Brown, though they have those guys called up, they still have a team, and they have such spread out scoring that they can still bite you and they can still come at you and get those victories. And, I wanted to focus on the 2 games that the Barracuda did win, the 4-2 effort at the beginning of April, and then the 7-5 goal fest towards the end of April. It was the end of April. It was April 30th, I believe. But, the score sheet, indicative of the players that aren't there anymore. Like you mentioned during the preview, they're either at Worlds, over in excuse me, in Latvia, correct?
Yeah, where Sean is returning from on his way to Philadelphia.
Riga, that's right. Yes, yeah, that's quite a flight, quite a red eye, but he'll he'll make it work. But yeah, I mean, there's some at Worlds, some that were called up to the Sharks that were injured, and yeah, I mean, what does we've talked ad nauseum about the list of characters, such a long list of characters for the San Jose Barracuda in 2021. What does this team look like against a very deep, very good defense? The defensive core is still intact, and you've got Logan Thompson, one of the best goaltenders, if not the best goaltender in the AHL currently. What does that look like?
I think that what we saw with the game against Colorado is what the Barracuda need to continue to bring in this series against Henderson. Earlier in the year, you guys had me on, and it was right after Joachim Blichfeld and Alex True had been called up, and they were the 2 leading scorers for the Barracuda at that point, and Blichfeld still ended up being the leading scorer of the team this year. And you guys asked who is going to be the next player to step up. And for me, it ended up being Max Latunov. And by my money, it feels weird saying this, but I think Max Latunov might be the MVP of this club this year, despite you've got Blichfeld being the leading scorer, Kozhinash being outstanding for the Barracuda this season. And ever since he's come back from his NHL call-up, he's looking every bit as good as he was before it. But Max Latunov was the one who kind of picked up the pieces, a third-year player now, a guy you guys asked me about in the season preview even, and I said, I don't know. He's a jack of all trades kind of thing, really good defensively, but don't quite know what he can bring offensively besides parking himself in front of the net. But he ended up getting that first goal in the game against Colorado with his dynamic duo Robin to his Batman kind of Evan Weinger there. But Max Latunov has been the one to kind of pick the team up on his shoulder, at least offensively. And he can definitely do it on the back end as well. Back checking, strong on his stick. He's got that long reach, being 6'3", 6'4". So Max Latunov's going to have to continue the pace. And then we saw Zach Gallant get a goal yesterday or last night. Christoph Rabik got 2 goals. Nick Malash decided 2 years is long enough. So if the Barracuda can continue to get offense from the unlikely players just as much as the likely players like Max Latunov, they might be okay. I think with Logan Thompson, you've got a goalie who definitely is, I don't know if he's playing out of his mind, but I know someone who used to play junior with him, and he said, yeah, I never saw this coming. Like the season that Logan Thompson has had. And I think it speaks really well to the coaching staff and the training staff in preparing him. And of course, to Logan Thompson himself, of recognizing I have a lot to improve on, but damn it, I'm going to improve. And he's been lights out this season. He is very aggressive around his crease, right on the edge of the crease. So if the Barracuda want to score a few more goals here, I think they really need to play to the fact that he's so aggressive out of the crease. They need to move that puck around as much as possible and get him sliding from side to side. Because I see a lot of Marc-Andre Fleury's game, at least in his aggression and the way he plays his angles, in Logan Thompson, and obviously both in the same organization. So that's not lost on me. But I think that if the Barracuda defense can continue to hold up, because Dylan Secura and Danny O'Regan didn't care who was in Teal. They just said, you know what? You're my next victim. And they were very strong in the season series. If they can be contained, I think the Barracuda will be fine. I think the Barracuda's biggest concern was just the consistency in this season series. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. I mean, it is playoffs, so why wouldn't we be excited? But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, every time these two teams have met, the Barracuda are a different team. So we'll see which team, literally a different team. So we'll see which team shows up here for this series.
And before we get to predictions, I'm going to say that the Barracuda, in my opinion, in kind of a microcosm of how they've done recently, they won that kind of gritty 2-1, just the first period was kind of disjointed for both teams. They won that one. They eked it out, 1-goal game. And then they came into Colorado. They were a little more succinct in regards to, I mean, like you said, they put in a good defensive effort in that first game, and they really, clamped down. So it was just the 1 goal from Tucson. But, in my opinion, like the Colorado game was more of a statement game because, not only did they come out and score 3 unanswered goals, but they held it. They only allowed the Sampo Ranta goal at the end of the second period. They held it for the rest of the third. And then boom, you pot 2 empty netters and game over. I mean, and again, to really frustrate the team so that Mika Salamaki, just stupid penalty as that was.
Okay, so that's what I said on. If you guys want to check it out, it's Teal Town USA on social media. But you hear me use the word stupid no fewer than probably a dozen times when describing that hit by Mika Salamaki on Jake Middleton. shake my head. And I don't know what was more dumb, the penalty or the fact that the Barracuda got a 7-minute power play out of that because the officials would not let the player serving Salamaki's penalty out of the box for 2 additional minutes.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, so they called icing, and then the players were arguing because of the fact that the player was still in the box. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Like, I haven't seen a 5-minute major in so long, like, and being served on the ice, apparently. Like, I thought once that 5-minute major is up, that player emerges from the box and it's just like a 2-minute, bench minor.
Yeah, that's minor. That's supposed to be. The player was supposed to be out after 5 minutes. And I was watching the clock because Nick Nollenberger, the Barracuda play-by-play announcer, he was saying, Barracuda's still on the power play. And I'm like looking at the clock going, that's not right. And I know a lot of the times the AHL TV clock is wrong, but that's not right was I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Why is the player, and then 90 seconds more tick off and the player's still not out. And then, like you said, they iced it, and I was sitting there thinking they should call icing because it's supposed to be 5-on-5 right now, but I have no idea why there are not 5 Eagles on the ice. So it was a very weird situation. It honestly, it played in a snarky sense. It played into the Eagles' favor because the Barracuda did absolutely nothing in those 7 minutes whatsoever.
No, they did not.
But for the Barracuda, it killed 7 minutes of time,
right,
while being up by 2 goals. So yeah, it was a weird situation. That whole first half of the third period was so weird. It started with Sampo Ranta having scored that goal at the end of the second. And then I don't know if he said something after his goal or what, but within the first 10 seconds of the third, there's a stoppage in play. Middleton takes a little cheap shot at Ranta. They're barking at each other. Robbie Russo comes in. He's barking with Ranta. And then the very next shift, Salamaki destroys Middleton. That wasn't retaliation. But it was AHL hockey.
It was a hockey game. It was a minor league hockey game, and we cannot complain about that. So, Kevin, let's wrap this up.
Sure.
Who do you have? And how do you think this 3-game series is going to go between the Henderson Silver Knights and San Jose Barracuda?
All right, folks. So I am going to pick the Barracuda to win game 1 on Friday evening.
Wow.
Are we doing scores as well?
You don't have to. I mean, that's getting pretty specific.
All right. Well, I'll say 3-1. I'm just going to arbitrarily throw that out there. But I think the Barracuda are going to win game 1. I think that they're running on the high. And they really want to make a statement against Henderson because you said that season series, at least record-wise, was not close. I think the Barracuda had some good efforts against Henderson that they came up short on. And I think they really want to make that statement. But Henderson's a very, very good team, top of the division. I do think they will come storming back in game 2. I think they're going to decidedly win game 2 on Sunday. And that's going to force the do or die game 3 Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock. So another, I hope this time if I do a post-game show in the afternoon, things don't melt down at work right when I go on air like they did on Wednesday in the Tucson post-game show.
I noticed that. You're like, I got to take this call.
I legitimately got a call from the CFO the moment we went on the air. And
right, I noticed that. I saw that.
Don't turn away the person who writes out your paychecks. So
nope, sure don't.
But so game 3, this is a hard one. I'm going to take Henderson in 3. But that one's going to be a dogfight for sure. I think this series is going to be just good, entertaining hockey. So I'll say San Jose in game 1, Henderson take 2 and 3.
I am going to take Henderson in 3 as well, Kevin, but I think San Jose wins game 2.
All right.
Yes, but I like your train of thought. I like your philosophy that, they're riding the high off of, defeating Tucson and Colorado, but you've got a rested Henderson team that's ready to go. So it's a double-edged sword, right? You've got the team that's well rested, but you've got the team with momentum, and you've got the team that has been playing and has been coalescing or gelling together,
Right.
And so, it's kind of you can pick that way or you can pick this way. So I'm going to pick this way and say Henderson. They're going to be a little bit rested, healing up from any ailments or injuries or anything like that they may have. And I'm going to say Henderson in 3, but it's going to be Henderson, San Jose, Henderson, and then we'll have Bakersfield and San Jose or San Diego.
So you're picking the home team technically for all 3 games then.
Well, I mean, all 3 games are taking place in Nevada, though.
But San Jose is technically the home team in game 2.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yes. So technically, just like San Jose was the home team in Irvine, California.
Yeah.
And Colorado was the home team against the Ontario Reign. Yeah. Technically, sure. But hey, the Barracuda are used to that. They were the home team in Tucson for a few games this season.
That's what I was going to say was, hey, if San Jose, it would be fitting if San Jose won the series and Bakersfield won the other series, because not only the fact that they both played half their seasons against each other, it sure felt like, but the Barracuda started off the season with a month on the road before returning to San Jose. So they've got these play-in games, and then they're in Henderson, and then maybe go back to Bakersfield for the other, San Jose, there's going to be no more hockey games played in San Jose this season. So why not finish the year going to the divisional finals with a month on the road?
I mean, why not?
Why not?
That would just be poetic for sure. Kevin Lacy from Teal Town USA, always a good friend of me and the program at large. Kevin, if the people don't know where to find you, where can they find you out on the World Wide Web?
I am at Kevin Lacy 22 on most social media platforms. I am easily conversational on Twitter mostly, but so go ahead and send me a tweet. And I am part of Teal Town USA. We are continuing to do Barracuda post-game shows because there certainly are no more Sharks game shows to do. So, you know what? You're a dedicated fan of hockey when you are listening to AHL podcasts. So we appreciate having you watching or listening to the Calder Farmstead and to Teal Town USA. So thanks for the follows, the tweets, and keep sending them on in because I got a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. Yes. Kevin the Yapper, as the self-proclaimed Yapper. It's not just me calling him that.
I'm sure there are a few people who have said the same thing. So
Kevin, it takes a talker to know a talker. So it's the pot calling the kettle black at this point. Kevin, thanks for coming on the program. And yes, I do want to encourage our listeners, especially those San Jose Barracuda fans. Thank you for tuning into the program. Go subscribe to Teal Town USA. Give them a listen. Subscribe to the Calder Farmstead on YouTube. Give us a like on this episode. Comment on it. Subscribe to our channel. Subscribe to Teal Town USA's channel. And give us a follow on social media, both Teal Town USA and the Calder Farmstead. We appreciate your fandom. We appreciate you listening. And like you said, you got to be a big fan if you're listening to an AHL podcast, whether it be yours or TCF right here. So
and if you want to learn all the ridiculous names that are on the San Jose Barracuda, like Timur Ibrahimov and Christoph Rabik and Josef Kozhinash, we're your go-to guys. So
yes, and Jaden Halbgawaks for sure.
Jaden Scrabble.
Jaden Scrabble. Just Scrabble. But I said it correctly. Like that's the first time all season.
You did.
Yes. Yes. All right. I'll take that moral victory. We're going to finish. Well, we're done with this segment. So Kevin, thanks for coming on the show, my friend.
Thank you.
You bet. Our second guest of the evening, he's becoming a longtime friend in the hockey business for me. He spent 3 seasons with the ECHL's Idaho Steelheads. That's where I got acquainted with him. And he won the 2018 Broadcaster of the Year Award on top of calling the 2018 ECHL/CCM All-Star Classic alongside now Seattle Kraken broadcaster Everett Fitzhugh. He then called 2 seasons for the AHL's San Antonio Rampage. And once that organization was purchased by the Vegas Golden Knights, he was officially hired as the Henderson Silver Knights play-by-play broadcaster in January of 2021. Welcome to the program, the man who issued me my very first press credential in October of 2017, nearly 4 years ago now, Brain McCormack. How are you, bud?
I'm good, CC, and thank you so much for never making me regret that decision to issue that credential.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'm glad that you took a chance on a guy from the sin bin, and yeah, I represented it well. And in just the 1 year that you were with Idaho, and you spent 2 years with San Antonio after that, and now here you are with Henderson in first place right now, currently in the Pacific Division. Of course, we're having, the little Pacific Division John D. Chick Trophy going to be awarded to the winner of this postseason format, and San Jose Sharks punching their ticket against the Colorado Eagles in a 5-1 victory. Kevin Lacy was just on the program talking a little bit about the Barracuda. I said Sharks, of course. Easy mistake to make, right?
I do it often, yeah.
Do you call the Silver Knights the Golden Knights occasionally?
No, but I've actually had the opposite problem. I was so, focused on hammering Silver Knights into my head. My biggest fear when I got started here in Henderson was going to be that I would accidentally say Rampage, just because it's muscle memory. You just want to make sure. Sure. There were a couple times in San Antonio I said Steelheads. I had to stop myself mid-word. So it's just a thing. You gotta exercise your way out of it. But I've had a couple of opportunities to do Golden Knights radio pregame shows, things like that, just to hop on and chat. And it's funny how often I say Silver Knights when I mean to say Golden Knights. It's all muscle memory, and when you say a certain word 4,000 times a day, it kind of gets hammered into your brain. But it's been generally relatively mistake-free. Like I said, I made mistakes, but you're gonna have to go find them yourself.
Yeah, and I'm not going to scour through all your old tapes and look for that. That's by any means. I'm not going to.
That sounds like a horrible afternoon. Yeah.
Oh my God, no! That's like that's like Twitter. Just like some of the Twitter people, they would just spend hours looking for someone's mistake. It's like, dude, find something better to do with your time and more positive, for crying out loud. But anyway, so
yeah, that's why we're lucky. There's a new game every day. We just keep rolling forward.
Exactly. So, and I can totally relate with the muscle memory thing. It's like a new job or even a new year. When you're writing out numbers for a new year, you put 2020 when it's, January 1st, 2021. Totally get that. So, all right, Brian. So the first question, it's kind of a broad one, but it's kind of apt. It's kind of appropriate because the Vegas Golden Knights in their first season made the Stanley Cup final. Now their parent club, or the parent club, did that. Now their AHL affiliate, the Silver Knights, having a great success, finishing at the top of the Pacific Division. Like I said, in the regular season, now they get the opportunity to clinch the John D. Chick Trophy, like I mentioned earlier. But what are some of the contributing factors that you personally have seen? You've covered every game, obviously, for the Henderson Silver Knights, and what do you see that the Silver Knights have kind of adopted that model of success? I know Manny Viveros, coming in from the Spokane Chiefs, a little Pacific Northwest tie there, and coming in and just coaching up these former, still Vegas prospects, but coming in from the Chicago Wolves, starting in a new city, everything like that. I mean, what is the some of the keys that you've noticed to him coaching the players and the players on the ice and how they're doing?
Yeah, well, CC, I'd say for one is culture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that mirrors between the NHL and the AHL side. I think that was one of the real benefits of having the AHL team move to Henderson and be right under the nose of the NHL brass, was to be able to ensure that kind of quality control. And it doesn't take a lot of work when you hire the right people. And Manny Viveros and his staff, all of them, Jamie Heward, Joel Ward, who of course played at all levels of hockey, and Jamie Heward and Manny Viveros a lot of success at the junior level. And Manny, having worked in Europe and that 1 year as an assistant with the Edmonton Oilers, well-traveled hockey men.
Mm-hmm.
But for all of them, their first year behind an AHL bench in their current role. And they've picked it up beautifully and quickly. I know we're at the end of the season, but it's still a short season, still a very quick learning curve. And I think one of the biggest things is communication. This is a staff that relates extraordinarily well to their players. And one of the reasons they can do so is because, again, that experience playing and coaching at the junior level and in Europe, not only do they have the skill set to relate to young European prospects who are trying to adjust to the North American game and the North American culture, and also just becoming professional athletes. We forget about that too. They're trying to adjust to the North American style and all this. They're also just, there's lots of players who have that head start because they're born here, and just becoming a pro hockey player is a hard thing to do. So all that combined, they relate very well there. And they've also spent so much time teaching kids. So when most of your roster is guys in their early 20s and guys from overseas, that combined factor, it really helps to have guys who have PhDs in handling both. So that skill set is there, and then just on top of the fact they know the game, and they coach an aggressive style, an upbeat style. That's been very helpful, and it's allowed them to mirror a lot of what Vegas does in terms of an aggressive style of play and a jump down your throat style of play, really, with that speed and transition. And I think another factor too is the fact that this team got off to a very, 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 very good start. They were 17-3 after 20 games. I'm pretty sure. I know it was the best 10-game start for any team, inaugural team in AHL history. I don't for a fact know whether it was the best 20-game start, but if it wasn't, it's up there. And then if you look at April, they struggled in April. It was a tough April. Things either came down to earth a little bit, or the learning curve, the regression to the mean. April was really rough, and May was a little bit more like what we saw the first 2/3 of the season. But for the Silver Knights, I think getting off to a great start like that, both from their own success and maybe other teams struggling to get acclimated to this very weird season, might have been a little bit of both, but they got off to a tremendous start. And when you get off to a good start like that, boy, I mean, winning makes everything easier, right? Things we usually talk about things snowballing in a negative connotation. Things can snowball positively too. The Silver Knights got off the ground, had a tremendous start, got addicted to winning, and had some of the pleasant surprises that also helped to fuel that. Logan Thompson, the numbers speak for themselves, but he has been phenomenal. And I think, again, having such a great start to the season as a team, and a lot of it was because of him, well, soon you start to believe it yourself. And boy, has he taken the reins and taken off. And some of the veteran players, your Ryan Murphys, your Danny O'Regans, have had tremendous seasons and provided exactly what you need from a veteran leadership perspective. So here I am rambling. I'm sorry, Cece. I'm probably answering 15 of your questions in one go here, but
you're good.
It's been it really has in many ways been a perfect storm for the Silver Knights in terms of getting a good feeling early and letting it catch fire and then fanning those flames. While at the same time, here we are heading to playoff action, and we'll get a good micro lab assessment of what all these teams really are. Because if there's one team that gave the Silver Knights a world of trouble this year, it was the Bakersfield Condors. Yes. And there's no guarantee we see that matchup again next week, because San Diego's very, very good and San Jose had a great play, and we don't know what we're going to see. But as good as the Silver Knights have been, and how at times this year it looked like an inhuman wins total or an inhuman trajectory that they were on, the Bakersfield Condors were there to remind us all that in a regular 76-game season where every team has their ups and downs, Bakersfield is probably the sample size of, boy, I would love to see what that matchup would look like in a regular 9-month season, how those two would face off against each other. That was, I think, a good dose of reality for assessing what this Silver Knights team has been this year.
Yeah, and yeah, the Bakersfield, that was going to be one of the points that I brought up, is Bakersfield was the only team in the Pacific Division to come out of the regular season with a winning record against Henderson. And, Henderson, in regards to PDO, Sean, my co-host who couldn't be here tonight, big analytics guy, he's been tracking PDO on all AHL teams this year. And my God, I mean, 100 is, you're not getting super lucky, but you're not getting, super unlucky. But I mean, Henderson, combined with the talent that they have, getting some good puck luck, their PDO was 104, 106, 108, 110. I mean, just these ungodly PDO numbers of just like, yeah, this team is really stinking good, but yeah, you're getting some good bounces and you're playing great defense in front of Logan Thompson too. And Logan Thompson's a great goaltender to match. So it's like when you have the offense, the defense, and the goaltending, all three of those areas clicking, it's hard to beat a team like that. Like you said, starting 17-3. And I noticed in your article today, kind of previewing the matchup against the San Jose Barracuda, 14-5-1 at the Orleans Arena there in Paradise, Nevada, Las Vegas. But yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a home record. And if this series goes to 3 games, I mean, that's going to all be there in Nevada. And so like to boast that home record, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. And CC, what I'd be interested, because I don't have the games charted out too specifically, but for the analytics crowd, Silver Knights had a bit of a change in approach, if you will, in the last quarter of the season. They were getting outshot. Oh boy, I want to say they were probably outshot in 28 of the first 33 games, something like that. I mean, like an overwhelmingly, dramatically high number of games that they were being outshot and winning 75% of those contests. And there's a few factors you can put into that, just the way they stylistically played when they were getting out to leads. Maybe pucks are coming from non-danger areas. I mean, Logan Thompson was still playing like Logan Thompson, but it would be fair to say that there would be nights when they give up 35 shots and take 25. But of those 25 shots, you had 8 or 9 grade A high danger chances, 4. And you'd say, like, all right, well, Logan Thompson only had to impress us 2 or 3 times, or Oscar Dansk on any given night as well. Sure. The shots for, shots against wasn't really representative of the 5-0 final score, where you'd say, well, how'd they pull that out? No, it didn't feel like a game where they were being outshot by 10 here nor there. The last 10 games of the season or so, many Viveros said, hey, we need to shoot the puck more. I want to see more pucks on net. I want to see more havoc in front. And this was, again, when the Silver Knights at that time were trying to pull themselves out of a very difficult April. And they did that, and they outshot their opponent, I think, 7 of the last 10 games. It was a very notable flick of the switch. So where you say the PDO was high and there was some puck luck in there, that's part of the game, and there's plenty to that. But this was also a Silver Knights team that was playing pretty efficient hockey, really. They were pick their spots, and when they did, it was precision attack. They got in, they got out, and they got out with a 2-0 lead. We saw a little bit more of a deluge of rubber in the last 10 games, and it made a difference. It helped them pull themselves out of those April doldrums, and I don't presume that that's going to go away over the course of this playoff series.
That kind of leads into my next question. With Vegas being in the playoffs, me covering the Colorado Eagles now, Brian, the Eagles had the problem that Henderson now has. And I think the Eagles more so because they had 4 starting forwards and 4 starting defensemen that were called up to the Avalanche in their expanded playoff roster. Henderson doesn't really have that problem, I notice. I mean, for their forwards, yes, Dylan Secura, Peyton Krebs coming back from, his WHL career, Cody Glass, Patrick Brown, all up with Vegas for the playoff roster. And the defense, defense is pretty well intact. So, in mind, go ahead.
Well, it's intact. The problem for the Silver Knights on the back end, I say problem, they've been enduring with it for about a month and a half now. Around the time in April when they started to struggle a bit was around the time that they lost Jake Bischoff and Carl Dahlstrom long term, and they're still out. And they're expected to be out. Sure. And those are significant losses, not just in terms of their play, but in terms of the minutes that they eat up. And I think that's why it's been such a revelation for the Silver Knights this year, for the Golden Knights organization. A player like Zach Hayes, an undrafted rookie defenseman who started the year on an AHL deal, plus 18 this season, and he's now on an NHL deal. He earned that promotion, if you will, mid-season. Right. Is a remarkable find of a guy who has size and a lot of steadiness. He and Braden Pahal were D partners in Prince Albert. And that I think it was the 18-19 season, I think. Braden Pahal was plus 76 and Zach Hayes was plus 72. But that's what they are. They're two-way defensemen, but really positionally sound, responsible players on the back end. But because of guys like those two who had to step up and eat some of those minutes, they've been able to endure. But like you said, the Silver Knights have been able to get through with some of the guys who have been called up. Danny O'Regan finished the year. He had 11 goals in his last 11 games and 17 points. He was having a great year already. Mm-hmm. But ironically, he was on a line with Dylan Secura all year long. And it was when Secura got called up the first time at the start of that 11-game run that Danny O'Regan decided, almost like, all right, well, I can't throw the ball anymore. I better run it myself. And that's when he started shooting more. And that kind of goes towards what we talked about with the shoot more mentality for the team as a whole. You've got guys like Danny O'Regan, Jack Dugan, even a guy like Cody Glass, guys who are playmakers. They will shoot, but they think pass first. if everybody's thinking pass first, well, eventually that's how you end up with 25 shots but 4 or 5 goals, because you're getting perfect shots, but you're not getting that many of them. Danny started shooting more, started taking it to the net more, started to take on the role of, well, I've got to be the finisher on this line now. And he did a heck of a job of it. So that's one of the reasons they've been able to survive some of the call-ups, and why they'll turn to the same formula again. It's because some of the veteran guys, those veteran guys who, even if they're not called up, you need to be stabilizing staples of your AHL team in order to develop young guys and in order to win while you do it. You need those AHL regular veterans, not just to be good examples, not only to be a veteran locker room presence, you need them to be productive. And Danny O'Regan has absolutely been that. On the back end, Ryan Murphy led all defensemen in scoring and has a pretty good shot at being defenseman of the year. And that was, coming back on an AHL deal after last year playing in the KHL, and reintroducing himself to the North American audience, and showing that he still has a lot of potential and upside, and having a great year, and again carrying a lot of the burden of two very, very relied upon top 4 guys like Jake Bischoff and Carl Dahlstrom going down. That put a lot more responsibility on Ryan Murphy, and he carried it extremely well.
Yeah, Ryan Murphy, definitely one of the best defensemen in the AHL this year. And to go back to what you were saying about everybody passing and not really anybody putting the puck on the net, or at least that philosophy, rather. I noticed when we were covering Henderson throughout the season here on the podcast that, Sekura, it's like, okay, well, he can put the puck in the net. Why isn't he, like, his shots on goal? I'm like, why isn't that number going up? And then it's almost like he heard me, because right after that episode, it's like he started putting the puck on net more. Yeah. And so there
were times that Dylan Sekura led the Silver Knights in shots on goal with, let's say, 70, which is fine. But Joachim Blickfeld led the Barracuda in shots on goal with 120. It's just a different mentality,
right?
But again, the shots that are going on, that there's a high propensity of high danger chances. So it's two different philosophies. You don't want to overpass and hold yourself to 20 shots a night. That's not a great way to go about it. But you can also have 40 shots a night and produce nothing of any kind of danger or value. Right. Silver Knights had a good balance of it. But I'll tell you what, there's also something to be said for when you're getting the kind of goaltending they get from Logan Thompson and the kind of overall defensive structure that they had. There weren't too many games in the first half of the season where the Silver Knights were chasing the game and throwing the puck on net. More often than not, they were playing with a 2-goal lead and managing the game, and that probably factors into that as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely, the philosophy definitely changes with that, and quality of shots. Yeah, that's definitely, if you're not getting those shots inside that home plate area in front of the goal, then yeah, it's definitely, you can put 40, 45 shots on the the stat sheet, but that doesn't mean a hill of beans if you're scoring 1 or 2 goals a game, for sure.
Well, and to that too, like we talked about Bakersfield, one of the things that's been fascinating when talking to Silver Knights players this year, which again, it's not like the Silver Knights, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but young team, but not an overwhelmingly young team. Like Ontario is a young team. They're half their lineup was drafted in the last 2 years. That is a young team. For the Silver Knights, though, again, one of the teams they had trouble with this year has been Bakersfield. And you'd ask, what's challenging about them? And you look at Bakersfield, they're the opposite end of the spectrum. They're old. They've got Adam. No, they've got Seth Griffith. They've got Brad Malone. They've Ryan Stand. I'll keep going. They've got experience. And I mean, how impressive is Adam Cracknell too for the years he's played, his age, the tread on the tires, and we need to remind ourselves there used to be a time when playing in the NHL of 39 wasn't that outrageous. I know times have changed, but the point is, I think we have to reacquaint ourselves that guys in their mid-30s who can take tremendous care of themselves and have talent can keep playing. Because I don't know off the top of my head, I just don't know what Adam Cracknell's contract status is. I'm not privy to that, but the point being is, look at what he did next year. I think Adam Cracknell can keep playing as long as he wants somewhere. Like he's still a very productive player. But talking to the Silver Knights players, they said, what's so tough about Bakersfield? It's like they just stick to their system. They don't make mistakes. If you fall behind, they don't give you there are no they don't let the door crack open a couple of inches so you can kick it down. I'm paraphrasing my own words here, but
sure.
It's a discipline and a maturity, and it was just interesting to hear that through the mouths of younger players, saying like you notice it when you play guys who have been there before and who know how to win. that's significant. So again, for all the things the Silver Knights have done so well this year, playing with leads, managing games, Bakersfield has been the one team they've played, not the only team, but the team that has consistently demonstrated they're just as good at managing the game as the Silver Knights have been. And that's been something that's been impressive to watch, is how the team has had to try to react to that, and for that matter, grab the hold of the game early.
Talking about we've talked about the forwards, we talked about the defensemen, we mentioned Logan Thompson and the season he had. Boy, he, popped on my radar when he was with South Carolina last year. And of course, just the goaltending tandem down there and just doing a great job at the ECHL level. Signs an NHL deal with Vegas, kind of surprising on my behalf, but now not so surprised. I mean, 16-6, 1-2, 1.96 goals against average, 0.943 save percentage. Like you said earlier, Brian, the stats speak for themselves, but getting to witness this guy game in and game out, I mean, what's so special about this kid?
It's battle level. It really is battle level. I talked to Kelly McCrimmon about this actually earlier today on our radio show, because Kelly McCrimmon coached Logan Thompson in Brandon. So I said, you must have had the preview. You must have had an idea. And I'm sure their relationship, in addition to just general scouting, was one of the reasons why Logan Thompson is a member of the Vegas organization now. But he said, well, yeah, I coached him, but I coached him when he was 17 or 18. I mean, you look at goaltenders, there's no harder position to predict for teenagers than the goaltending position. You don't know what they're going to turn into 3, 4, 5 years later in any direction. There are 18-year-old phenoms who turn into nothing. They're journeymen at the age of 25 who hop on the radar and they have 10-year careers. But what Logan Thompson has is battle level. There'll be 4 or 5 rebounds on a practice drill. He's still lunging. He's still diving across. And he's talked about that himself. He's extremely competitive, and he likes to be very aggressive, whether it's challenging shooters or coming out to play the puck. There's a lot of confidence without arrogance, which is a good quality to have. But he has I almost refer to it sometimes as a Dominic Hasek quality, and I do not mean that as a direct comparison. I don't say you play them side by side and you're kind of it's like a mirror. No, that's not what I'm saying, because nobody plays the way Dominic Hasek does.
Different style, yeah.
But what I am saying is that he will throw himself in front of pucks. You will think Logan Thompson is completely out of position, and then you will see him doing some sort of reverse snow angel to somehow get a piece of it. Just every now and then he's flopping and swimming in a way that is desperate. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. He never gives up on pucks, and because of that, he will make saves he has no business making. And I think a lot of us would say, especially playoffs is the best time of year to gauge this, is good goaltenders stop every shot they're supposed to stop. Nothing more, nothing less. Mm-hmm. Great goaltenders stop the shots they're not supposed to stop, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the ones they have no business stopping. That's the newest analytic, right? Goals against above expected or something like that. Basically, we're counting the 2 or 3 shots you shouldn't have gotten to.
Right.
That's I don't have Logan Thompson's numbers in front of me, but I got to think on that spectrum he'd rank pretty well. And I also think there's a bit of a mental game in there as well. He's good, again, confident without arrogance, but there's a swagger to his game now too, where he went through a little bit of a dip himself during that April swing where the Silver Knights as a whole had trouble, and I'm sure one fed the other in both ways. When you face 45 shots a couple of nights in a row, eventually you're going to have it. It's going to find a couple of cracks in the armor. But for the first, I want to say it was his first 13 or 14 starts of the year, he gave up 1 goal or less in 8 of them, or something like that. So I think there was part of that too. He'll have 2 or 3 highlight reel saves in a sequence, and then if you're on the other side, you say, like, you know what? Heck, 1 might have to be enough tonight, or 2 might have to be enough tonight. And I don't doubt that affects the way you approach a game as well, coming from the other side. I think that for Logan Thompson, there's a talent, there's a confidence, and for certain, on any given night, there's a bit of an intimidation factor as well. And I think Stuart Skinner in Bakersfield has had the same thing going for him on some nights this season as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that's been one of the things that's been very promising for Logan Thompson this year. It's his first year taking on a full AHL workload. Who knew what you were going to get? Well, you got a guy who wants to be in the net every single night, and that you want to put in there every single night.
Yeah, that's Yeah, that battle mentality, like you were talking about. That's great. That's great. That's a great analogy. Lastly, real quick, I don't want to keep you for too long, of course, because you're a busy man.
I
But
think I'm keeping you too long. I won't shut up.
this is content, man. I'm all about it. I mean, this is all killer, no filler. I'm for it for sure. But lastly, I did want to cover the kind of the series preview, as it were. I know you typed, like I said earlier, you typed up that little article on the Silver Knights website, breaking down the series and previewing it. But there was a couple games out of the 8 that these teams played against each other. I was going into it blind because Colorado and San Jose didn't play each other this year. So that was kind of okay, well, we don't really know how these styles are going to mesh and everything. But yeah, 8 games in the regular season, Henderson versus the San Jose Barracuda. Only 2 of them, San Jose came out victorious. One of them, San Jose scored 4 goals. And the other one, San Jose scored 7 goals and went 5 for 5 on the power play. I thought you made a typo, not to discount your double checking or anything, but 5 for 5. I'm like, holy crap. What? Yeah. And so I went and checked the game sheet and was like, well, there you go. 5 for 5 on the power play. And one of the, just the struggling penalty kill nights for the Henderson Silver Knights. But I mean, that's a really small sample size. You still have 6 victories over this club. I mean, how does Henderson, get those 2 victories over San Jose? I know their cast of revolving characters. I think they've had like 35 or 36 players on their roster this season. It's been up there. It's been kind of ridiculous. So, I mean, how does Henderson prepare for that? And how do they end up getting those 2 W's and making it to the Pacific Division final?
Yeah, well, CC, that 5 for 5 power play game for San Jose, yeah, not a typo, an anomaly, but maybe not a typo.
Right.
Because I think San Jose finished the year, I want to say they were 21st on the power play, so not like they were overwhelming juggernaut with the man advantage either. But that was, you said, a rough day on the power play for the Silver Knights. That was a rough 2 weeks on the power play for the penalty kill for the Silver Knights, because
right.
I want to say at the end of that game, and of course, going 0 for 5 on the kill is going to give your numbers a particular hit. But still, I think they were in maybe 54 or 55% on the penalty kill in their prior 10 games. I mean, that's very, very rough. But for San Jose, what's so interesting for this series, I haven't seen any transactions today. This could have changed. But looking at their roster, they're a team where the NHL parent club has taken a lot of players and given them an NHL taste at the end of the year, and now given them off to their national teams for the Worlds. Like Leon Bergman, I think, has gone to Team Germany, and he's not the only one. But at the end of the year, they did not have Joachim Blichfeld. They did not have Alexander True. That 7-5 game you're referencing, 3 goals and 5 points in that game for Yoel Shellman. Hasn't played. I don't believe he was in the play-in games for San Jose. I don't think he's been in their lineup since, because he got called up, and I don't think he went back in. Sasha Shemolevsky got called up. He had 2 goals in that game. He hasn't gone back. So, long-winded as I've been throughout this whole show, San Jose Barracuda have lost a lot of their top producers all along the way, and they've found people to fill in the gaps along with good goaltending. Josef Kozinach had a really good couple of days here. Jaden Habogowaks is a talented offensive producer. Maxime Latunov has been San Jose's best player against the Silver Knights this season. He's got 5 goals in 8 games. So, it's kind of been a next man up mentality for San Jose that's been effective. And just the structure of a 3-game series like this, there is no better setup for an underdog than this series setup that we have. And that's not to say that San Jose couldn't win just on the fact of playing 2 or 3 better hockey games. Of course they can. But if they weren't feeling up to it, if Josef Kozinach has a good 2 days where he just slams the door, it doesn't really matter what anybody does. Right. Same as Logan Thompson. If Logan Thompson wants to stand on his head for a couple of days and it's reliant on him to do that, that could be enough. A goaltender can absolutely steal these 2 games. So that, I think, is the biggest X factor for all of these playoff series. Goaltending is going to be paramount. But for the Silver Knights, they should have a bit of a firepower advantage just in terms of having their regular weapons that they've relied upon throughout the season available to them. They, at this point, don't have Cody Glass and don't have Dylan Secura, but Danny O'Regan, Lucas Alvinus, Jack Dugan, etc., all still in the fold. Not to mention Jonas Rondbjerg playing his best hockey now. The depth is there. But for the Silver Knights, I really think the important thing is going to be good starts. because this is I want to say San Jose. I want to say that they're minus 15 in first periods this year. It's a slow starting team. A slow starting team that is missing some of its better offensive weapons. That does not set up well for a team if they find themselves in the position of having to chase the game. That doesn't line up well. So if I'm the Silver Knights, I want to have a really good start. Of course, you want to score first because that's a no duh. Everybody wants to score. You want to be the only team that scores. But I think for the Silver Knights, strong first periods, especially playing at home, to grab control of the game, the pace of play early, and enable yourself to roll four lines and use your depth. I think that's going to be very, very significant. Again, presuming we're going to see Josef Kozhinash, who we have seen this year, but not as much. We saw a little bit more of Alexei Melnichuk and Zachary Sawchenko this year. That could be a big swing factor for them. But also these are two teams. Of course, the Silver Knights and Bakersfield Condors had a very feisty end of the season last week. But the Silver Knights and San Jose Barracuda season series has been violent. So I would expect that as well too. For the Silver Knights, play the speed and skill game. Do not let it deteriorate into a slugfest. And allow yourself to play that downhill hockey that served them well for this entire season.
And I'll add one name, a guy that just came to the Barracuda, to the list of players that you mentioned. But I kept thinking that Nick Nolenberg was saying Verbeek, and I was having flashbacks of Pat Verbeek, of course.
Yeah.
But no, he was saying Hrabik. It was Hrabik. He's saying Hrabik. And so Christoph Rabik, he looked fantastic. He potted a goal. He potted another empty netter the previous night on Wednesday night against the Eagles. Keep an eye out for him as well. So
up from ECHL Orlando, if I'm not mistaken. And again, that's a factor too, is again, in a 3-game series, anyone can make an impact. Being a difference maker for a 7-game series requires a little bit of consistency and a little bit of dig down. Anybody can have the 2-goal afternoon that changes a weekend. And again, that might make coaches nervous, perhaps, or excited, but it makes it very, very unpredictable from the standpoint of fans, which is, again, the season we've had. I think that this is really just a celebration the next 2 weeks for the American Hockey League, that we reached the finish line of this season. We came into this campaign, we didn't know what this was going to look like. We were all extremely optimistic and hopeful. But for myself, I hadn't been in a hockey rink since last March when I got in for preseason. I was thrilled to be there. And, we were all just going to do our absolute very best and obey protocols and do what we mold the clay that we had available to us and make a season out of it. And if you'll remember, the Henderson Silver Knights and San Jose Barracuda, the second preseason game of the year. Second preseason game, it got canceled during the second intermission because there was a COVID concern.
Oh, yes.
So at that point, when that happens, you say to yourself, like, what's this going to look like in 2 weeks? There was no way of knowing. Now we're at the end. Some teams had a smoother or bumpier ride than others, but we all made lemonade out of the lemons, and we all got here, and we're at the finish line. And the COVID situation, by and large, is improving every day, and that's why watching the playoffs on TV, it's great to see a lot more fans in the building and things trending in the right direction. But what an overwhelming success it's been for the American Hockey League just to have this season happen. And now we've got a very unique playoff setup. It's just in the Pacific Division, but we have it nonetheless. And that's where, it's a best of 3. It's we have the play-in tournament. Everything about this is going to be very much a blitz and a sprint and 2 playoff rounds in 2 weeks. The way this is set up, whoever wins the Pacific Division crown, will that be a better indicator of who the best team in the division was than the regular season was? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the best method for truly determining who the best team was. I don't know that that's the important thing. I think the important thing is that we had a season for each team. They got the development needs that they needed out of it, and that's certainly paramount. Mm-hmm. And now we have a playoff series that is going to be fun and interesting, and fans will enjoy. And if that means upsets, if that means if that means a shocker at the end, whatever that might mean, We will enjoy it for what it is. We will salute the winner for what they accomplished in this 2-week stretch, and we'll all be ready to acknowledge and congratulate, and then look forward to next year, which, God willing, I think we all expect is going to be an overwhelming amount of normal.
Yes.
So, for these playoffs, they're going to be fun, they're going to be exciting, they're going to be unique, and they're going to be fast. And we'll make it a celebration of hockey for a week and a half to 2 weeks as it deserves to be.
I love it. I'm going to add one question that is not related to the play on the ice, but it is related to an ice arena. And I'm talking about the Dollar Loan Center that's going up there in Henderson. And I know you and I talked about it when we briefly spoke while you were here in Loveland, a few weeks ago now. But my goodness, that's going to be a great facility. And you want to talk about getting back to normal. I mean, once that place opens up, I mean, how stoked are you, Brian, to be able to go into a new arena in a year's time like that, and just be able to take part in that brand new facility?
I'm very, very, very excited. I've got the very unique opportunity to actually be around here while it's going up. I've been there 2 or 3 times. We've shot some videos for the Silver Knights website and whatnot, but I've thrown a hard hat on and walked around and had the construction crew explain to me what they're doing. And I've been my parents built their house when I was a teenager, so I walked through it when it was just 2x4s standing up, and like, oh, you're standing in the living room right now. And you look around like, how the heck does the table fit in this room? You can't really conceptualize it. Sure. And then the house is built and you walk in, you're like, oh, there's more room in here than I thought there was. Now I'm doing that with locker rooms and press boxes and the luxury suites and yada, yada. And it seems plenty big enough without the walls. But I'm getting a chance to see how this is all coming together from, a concept to a reality. And it is going up so quickly. That's one of the benefits of being in the desert is there aren't too many days of inclement weather that's going to slow down a construction crew. But in 6 months, it's a building. There's a roof. It's they're starting to work on interior things. So there's still work to be done, but it's going to be this time next year it is going to be a functioning arena. We already had an announcement a couple of weeks ago, or is it last week now? All days blend together. The indoor football league is coming to that arena too. So it's going to be a 6,000 seat building. It's going to be perfect for what the American Hockey League draws. The fan enthusiasm has been so significant over at the Orleans. It's going to be a rockin' building. They've designed it to be essentially a mini T-Mobile. And just looking at some of the accommodations and the amenities and the fan experience things, I don't know of any other minor league team in the country that is having a building like this custom built for them. It's going to be state of the art. It's going to be the kind of building that draws a lot of high profile events outside of the Silver Knights. Again, high profile events that can hold a capacity of 8,000 or whatnot, that kind of cozy confines, intimate setting. Sure. But for fans, they're going to be the worst seat in the building is going to have you right on top of the action. So it's going to be an unbelievable facility. And right now, the only problem for me is that it's almost like when you get to open your, you get to look at your Christmas presents in July, but you can't open them until December. I've got a sneak peek of what's going to be pretty incredible. And now I just have to chomp at the bit in the meantime. But, the Orleans has been a great home. It'll be a great home next season as well. But it's very encouraging, exciting, and impressive for me in my first year in this organization, how big the imagination is. That they were going to bring the Silver Knights to Henderson, and they were going to do it right, and they were going to make sure that it wasn't going to be shoehorned into what already existed. Like, no, we're going to create something that makes it a top-end facility for our players, and also a top-end facility for Henderson. This is going to be a building that's going to have a lot of purposes as a community hub for that city. Which, for those of you who haven't been to Vegas, it's about 20 minutes off the Strip. You've got the Strip. Downtown Vegas, you've got Summerlin on one side, you've got Henderson on the other. And between now the IFL, the AHL, and everything else coming to Henderson, that's where the Raiders have their training facility now. It's really been a great spur for activity and redevelopment in the city of Henderson. I think everyone's really benefited from it. And it gets a little closer to finished every day.
Exciting stuff, man. I'm going to have to hopefully... Well, let's hope I can secure a press pass and be there for the opening, the christening of that Dollar Loan Center when the time comes. But
I'll
Brian
put in a good
McCormack,
word for you.
what's that?
I'll put in a good word for you.
Thank you, sir. You know the media director, right?
Yeah, he annoys me every day by looking in the mirror.
He's got a pretty good beard going on, though. You gotta give him credit for that. So it's filled in quite nicely for sure.
Not here though. The mustache stays blonde. That's why I keep it for radio. Yeah.
Hey, that's okay. That's all right. I mean, it's you got the fullness here, and I think that counts. You get points for that. So, Brian McCormack, play-by-play broadcaster for the Henderson Silver Knights. Brian, where can people follow you on social media so that they can see you post Fraser Crane and Niles Crane do their little dance when Henderson gets the victory?
That's part of the brand, isn't it?
It's just part of your brand for sure.
At Brian J. McCormack. At Brian J. McCormack is where you can find all the Silver Knights updates throughout the season.
There you go. Well, Brian, thanks again for coming on the Calder Farmstead, and we may call your number again here shortly, depending on how well Henderson does throughout the tournament, and of course, I mean, I'm gonna ask you to come back on eventually, but I just want to thank you for coming on, my friend.
CC, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and happy to stop in anytime.
Thank you. Alrighty, my third and final guest for the evening. He's been with full press coverage since July 2020, covering both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Marlies. He's also worked for Fansided and also created his own site, kind of stands as an archive now, Puck and Field, back in July 2018 for his NHL, NFL, and Major League Baseball articles. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, Luke Garrison. Luke, thanks for coming on the show, bud.
Thank you for having me. That was a great intro. It's always nice to have your tires pumped a little. So,
hey, I like to give credit where credit's due, and kind of say, hey, this is where this person's coming from, and this is the experience that they bring to the table, as it were, here on the farm. So
awesome.
Good to have you on, man. And you just got done covering. I mean, we're recording this on Thursday night, Thursday, May 20th. Just got done watching the Toronto Marlies and Belleville Senators play the last regular season game of the 2021 AHL season. And, I was kind of pointing out to another full press employee, Elaine Shercliffe, normally covers the AHL Central Division, but I was pointing out to her when we had her on the show just a few days ago, I said, you know what? It's kind of weird that there's still regular season games going on when you have a postseason. And I said that about the AHL, but I had forgotten that the NHL is also doing that right now with the Canucks and the Flames finishing up their regular season campaign while, the other divisions have their postseason and their playoffs going on. And, the Canadian division starts their postseason tonight as well.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of an odd parallel between the NHL and the AHL there. But yeah, 6-3 victory for the Toronto Marlies over the Belleville Sens. Luke, fresh in your mind, fresh off of viewing that, what did you notice about the Marlies taking you post 6 goals and you win 6-3. I'd call that a fairly commanding victory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this season they haven't had the powerhouse team that we've seen in recent years.
Right.
Obviously, for a good reason, because a lot of those players have been promoted and are now helping the big club. But, all things considered, especially because, now it's more of a pure development team because, you have a lot of players in the roster that could be NHL players someday. They're obviously a lot farther away than, say, Nylander and Kapanen were when they played for the Marlies. And, yeah, it's nice to kind of see them get this win today. Just lately down the stretch, they've improved a lot, especially like Joseph Woll, for example. Because, with young goaltenders, the development curve is always so fickle. You just never really know what kind of progress they're going to make and what kind of time they're going to make that progress. But, yeah, I think that this last stretch of the season and just the season as a whole, when you consider all the injuries and the call-ups and all the kinds of things they went through, finishing around 500 is, not nothing to sneeze at necessarily. And, yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to build off of. I think the Marlies will probably be a lot better of a team next year. Whether or not they'll be in a similar Canadian-type division, who knows? Since we're all getting vaccinated now, you'd like to hope that things will be, back to somewhat normal in the near future. But really, who's to say? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with another friend who lives up in the Greater Toronto area, and she was telling me a week or two ago. She's like, yeah, I got my vaccine, but I'm getting my second one in August. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Like, the effectiveness of the second vaccine isn't going to really be, it's not going to be as potent if you're waiting that long in between shots. So it was kind of a head scratcher for me. And that kind of leads into the first question that I had for you, actually, is regarding the COVID-19 global pandemic and how Canada, and specifically the province of Ontario, where you currently reside, and of course the Marlies and the Belleville Sens. I mean, very poetic that they finish out the season for the AHL with all of the drama that's been going on there. But I mean, it's been a wacky season. No ifs, ands, or buts for all of professional sports. But like I said, especially the Canadian division, especially the province of Ontario. Now, Luke, being at ground zero, covering the Maple Leafs, covering the Marlies, I guess a good question for you is, from that firsthand perspective, I mean, how the difference between the Maple Leafs and the Marlies, how would you say that each club has handled it? And would you say one franchise handled it better than the other?
That's actually a very interesting question. Because, obviously the NHL, being the top league in the world, there's going to be a lot more, hoops and such that people are willing to jump through to make sure that actually happens. Whereas, the AHL is a lot like the OHL, where at points we were like, is there even going to be a season? Is it feasible to, have this kind of, to have it start, have it continue? But I think that it's hard to say really who, I guess, handled it better. I think they both handled it reasonably well, all things considered. Obviously, like the little outbreak the Marlies had, who's to say whether or not that was within their control? Because, obviously how you can contract COVID seems to be, kind of simple. But, it's also, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not here to say whether or not it was easy for them, or whether they why they caught it, or if it was their fault or anything like that, or if the onus is on them. But I think what's unique about the Leafs and the Marlies is not to say there isn't great communication between other NHL clubs and their farm teams, but I think that the conversations between the Leafs and the Marlies, and even the Growlers, even though there wasn't really anything with them, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that all the connecting franchises in this organization they have very fluid conversations. I think a lot of that is helped by the fact that Keefe and Dubas started with the Marlies, worked their way up. So, it's not like they're just the Leafs management who's trying to kind of guess what the Marlies are going through. Like, they've been there, they know, how it works and all that kind of thing. They're very privy to, the AHL, maybe even more than some of their peers. And so I think that I think they handled it pretty similarly, just because the conversations between the two organizations, or the two franchises, I should say, we're always very fluid. I guess as I was kind of alluding to before, the Marlies, they kind of have, like maybe slightly better accommodations, etc., than other AHL teams, just because there's so much money that can be allotted to that franchise. And so, yeah, that's a really good question, and it's really hard to say. But, I think at the end of the day, like, both organizations did the best that they could. Obviously there wasn't really anything COVID related that affected the Leafs too much. So I guess if you want to bring it down to technicalities, you could say the Leafs handled it better since they didn't have an outbreak. But at the same time, to say that might be unfair, because, like I said, it kind of puts the onus on the Marlies. And then really it's like, who's to say how at fault they were for what happened to them, right? So at the end of the day, I was just really happy to see that the Marlies were able to play out their season. And that, these players, like, especially defensemen, because defensemen take longer, as we've seen, with Sandin and Liljegren's trajectory to the NHL, as opposed to, obviously, like, the hot forwards. It's a lot easier to step in as a forward, as a defenseman, to round out your game, to add muscle, etc. It takes time. So it was just nice, to see, like, Liljegren, Matt Hollowell, Joseph Duzak, regardless of how far away these players are from potentially being impact NHL players, it was just really nice to, actually have the season. And, even for cases like Nick Robertson, right, other players who are on the fringe, like, it's just great that they have somewhere to play. And I just love that it actually, worked out, and they had a pretty solid season, all things considered.
Yeah, I while you were talking, I pulled up my emails from the AHL communications department, and I only found like one block of games that the Marlies had to reschedule, and it was April 23rd, 24th, and 28th against Belleville. That was the one. And so and then they rescheduled those games Let's see here. They rescheduled it from 23rd to May 20th of today's game. And then the 24th was not rescheduled. So, and then let's see, Belleville at Toronto scheduled for May 1st. So they still squeezed them in there. The Marlies played 35 out of their 36 games. And, that's not bad at all. Belleville the same. I mean, that was the one game that was canceled. And those were that was the one game. It looks like in the division, because you look at Stockton played an even 30 games, and I don't think any of their games got postponed or canceled from what I remember. But then you've got Laval, and you've also got Manitoba. And of course, Manitoba, when you have a 17 game home stretch, that definitely doesn't hurt. So, but man, Laval, I mean, they took a commanding lead of the division, and Laval, they kind of struggled out of the gate, and then they won all those games in the middle of the season, and then they kind of tapered off because they had a couple of guys that had torn ACLs. They went out for the season, went and had surgery, but then Manitoba rattled off like a 11, 12, 13 game point streak. They had like 10 wins in a row at one point. And so, those two obviously, especially Laval locking it up pretty early, and then Manitoba making that late surge for second place, and then Belleville and Toronto rounding out 3 and 4. And of course, Stockton just, coming out guns blazing to start the season, and then just kind of tapering off and not really recovering from that. It's just,
no kidding.
It's amazing that that's the one game that wasn't rescheduled because of COVID-19 protocols. So you mentioned Joseph Woll earlier in this segment, and I did want to touch on the goaltending situation this year, because it was, like many goaltending situations in the AHL, it was a revolving cast of characters. I counted 8 different goalies, not starting necessarily, but 8 different goalies hitting the ice for the Toronto Marlies this year. And of course, the story that, Toronto picked up on pretty early in the season, and it didn't hurt that he started the first 12 games for the Marlies, Andrew D'Agostini, of course, spent a little time there in Brampton, ECHL caliber goaltender, in my opinion, cutting his teeth at the AHL level this season. A lot of ECHL caliber guys got that opportunity, with half of the teams in the ECHL not playing this season. So, you had D'Agostini 6-6-0, 3.17 goals against average, and a .89 save percentage. And then you had Joseph Woll, and it was weird looking at both of these guys' stats, because you had Woll was .500 as well, 7-7-0, 3.54 goals against average, a little bit higher than D'Agostini. But then you had, instead of .89 even, it was .892. It's like these guys are looking in a mirror and seeing the exact same thing. It's like, it was kind of an interesting statistic that I saw there. And of course, you had, other guys coming in. Of course, Frederick Anderson, he started a game on a rehab stint. Carey Price kind of did a similar thing with the Laval Rocket recently. And, Michael Hutchinson, being based here in Denver, Colorado, not unfamiliar with Hutch, and and Cal Rosen, both were in the Colorado organization last season. So it's just, a little connection there, a little sidebar. I get distracted easy. Don't mind me. But the goaltending situation. So Luke, tell me, like, going into 2021-22, seeing this goaltending by committee throughout the season, of course, you had Joseph Woll, and gosh, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head. Who exactly was the Villavainen, the acquisition from Cleveland. So do you maybe see Villavainen coming back to the organization next year, or who would you see as the 1A and 1B goaltenders for the Marlies next year?
That is a very good question. I think I do like Villavainen a lot, because even though he was on a 1-year contract and he wasn't really, doing much, I think it was tough for the Leafs, to give up what they did to get him. And I think, it's kind of like I'd say has the outside shot, because, at the end of the day, even though Ian Scott, for example, even though he's been pretty injury prone the last couple of seasons, this is a guy who won WHL goaltender of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he won the Memorial Cup, or at least he got to the finals. And I remember in particular one game, he had like a 55 save performance or something ridiculous. So despite all the injury concerns around him, I think that's still a goaltender the Leafs and the Marlies are very high on. And obviously, Joseph Woll coming over from, I think it was Boston College he played for, had a great NCAA career. And, obviously, like, those goalies were both draft picks. I think they were both picked in the 4th round. So, the Leafs really haven't had a good history of developing their own goaltending, and when they do, they trade it away, like Tuukka Rask. But I think I guess what I'm trying to say is that heading to next year, I think that Ian Scott and Joseph Woll are the ideal tandem that they want to roll with. But it is interesting, when these players, especially like like a D'Agostini, has had a bit of more of a journeyman career, a bit more of like a less traditional path to actually making even just the AHL. It's just the Leafs seem to be a franchise that, especially at the minor league level, they want to afford opportunity to those who deserve it. And so even though in an ideal world they want Scott and Woll probably to be 1A, 1B next year, or someone to take over the crease and have the other as a backup, I don't think that they're closing it off to these other goalies who have come up this year and really shown that they do belong, that they can play well. Even if their numbers don't reflect that, you know what I mean? It's because obviously the Marlies weren't as strong defensively as I was saying in past seasons. But I really just don't think that it's going to be, a situation where it's like these two goalies are given the crease. Like, I think it's really anybody's game. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that unfolds.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we had a little bit of a recording hang up, dropped internet connection when Luke Garrison came on the program. Thankfully, he got to finish his answer there, but unfortunately, my internet service decided to just cut out for a good 45 minutes. So that will do it for the Calder Farmstead. I want to thank Kevin Lacy, Brian McCormack, and Luke Garrison, all three of those guys, for coming on in lieu of Sean O'Brien being out, having a previous engagement tonight, having to travel on the road. And I appreciate all three of you coming on the show with me holding down solo duties here. And that'll do it for episode number 38 of the Calder Farmstead podcast. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you are listening to it from. If you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, comment on what you thought of the episode, and of course, please subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. And doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. So please review us. Give us 5 stars if you think we earned it. If you think we did 3.5 stars, give us a pity star and a half, please. Follow us, subscribe to our podcast on any audio platform or any video platform. And you can also follow us on social media at the Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at Calder Farmstead on Twitter. My apologies. At the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. And links to all of that and more can be found on our link tree. And if you're watching this program on video on YouTube, you can see the link right down there. If you can't, I'll tell you it's linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. Thanks for that rockin' theme music. We appreciate it, Adrian. So that'll do it. I'm CC Hockley. Like I said, episode number 38 in the books right before the Pacific Division semifinal on Friday, May 21st. Game 1, both San Diego and Bakersfield and Henderson in San Jose, both playing on that Friday evening. So thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.